tips, to effectively operate within the government contracting sphere. And this evening's guest is Miss LaShonda Bracy of LaShonda Bracy LLC. She is a serial entrepreneur, an author, sought-after trainer, guru, and creative visionary. As CEO and president of HealthWorks and ASAP Training and Course Development, this inspiring entrepreneur is making strides in the world of government training and consulting and beyond. Since starting 2 training firms and working with hundreds of clients all around the country, she has built a solid reputation as an astute deal maker for top federal and private sector agencies, executives, and everyday individuals seeking to build and improve their learning portfolios. This ambitious leader brings unique perspective and experience and continues to overcome obstacles and blaze new trails daily. LaShonda has remained on the fast track, receiving her Bachelor's of Applied Science in Biology and Chemistry while working full-time for a pharmaceutical company. We're going to have to talk about that. She has obtained her master's degree in training and development and course development. She is also a graduate of the Steve Harvey School of Business Acceleration and has been featured on Fox 5 DC, the Wharton Lead Council Lunch and Learn speaker, and the Black Women's Roundtable Advisory, just to name a few. I want to introduce everyone to Miss LaShonda Bracy. Welcome.
Welcome. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. How's everybody doing this evening?
We're doing great, and we're waiting on sitting on pins and needles. I've got my pen and paper and my tea because I'm freezing for some reason. Ready to wait out all the golden nuggets you're getting ready to drop. So just take it away.
So I don't know. After that introduction, I don't know how to even top that. But I want to start off by just saying that over the past few years, there have been a recharge of small businesses getting their break in government contracting. Although the interest has peaked with small businesses, there are still a lot of misconceptions and misinformation that's out there and half-truths when it comes to getting into this industry. So one of the biggest misconceptions that people get is when you're thinking about government contracting is, oh, I've got to have a lot of money to start with government contracting, and that's the furthest thing from the truth. I was working a job when I got my first contract, and I'll talk about that at some point. One other is that it's hard to get into government contracting, and this is often why small businesses don't even try to increase their bottom line by going after government contracts. But my whole thing is, why wouldn't you want to do business with the largest corporation in the world that buys everything? Every good and service that's sold, the government purchases. So I get calls daily from individuals wanting to get into government contracting, and many are misled into believing that you've got to get on a GSA schedule, or you get on a GSA schedule and you just sit back and wait for the phone to ring. And what people don't realize is if you're on a schedule, you still got to work, you still got to market, you still got to explain who you are, what you are, you've got to give them your business resume. So oftentimes businesses are looking for a quick fix and an easy way to make a buck, but in this industry, every business is very different and every government agency runs their organizations differently. So as a small business, if you embrace this little secret early on, you'll have a greater chance of success in the government sector, whether it be state, local, or federal. The government market has its own language, and not knowing and understanding the language is also a reason why small businesses often don't succeed, or they feel like they can't play in this big old sandbox. So with a little hard work, with some persistence, with some growing pains, your potential for returns are huge in government contracting. So I just want to give people just a relative perspective and experience. Um, and I've had great success in government contracting, as has many businesses or several businesses here, especially here in the DC area or in populations that are in communities that are heavily populated with government agencies. I don't want you to feel like you were going to be overlooked because you're a small business. Don't be intimidated by the big guys. And this is a absolute lucrative and realistic possibility. It's not a get rich quick scheme. If you've got, like I said, a business or a service, you can sell to the government. But it's all about how you strategize and how you present yourself. So one of the first things you want to make sure you do is you register properly. So like I said, one of those big misconceptions is that it's hard to get government contracts, and it's actually not. I think it deters people, and it's set up to be a deterrent because there's a lot of paperwork, and you need to do the paperwork in order to get the contracts. One of the other things you need to do is identify who your ideal client is. So oftentimes I get, oh, I want to be like you. I want a government contract. Well, who do you want to sell to? I want to sell to everybody. No, you don't want to sell to everybody. You can't sell to everybody. So every agency is not your client, so you need to identify the agencies that will best be able to provide you, or you can provide services to them and work with them to get started. And then you also want to make sure that you're priced reasonably. Be proactive and know what your competition is charging. And know that if you charge what your competition is charging, can you still make a profit? Or do your prices need to be a lot lower? For me, my prices are typically lower than my competition because I don't have an extreme amount of overhead. And I'll give you a good example of that. One of the companies that's competition for me, they are in a office space in Tyson's Corner, and they are paying $50,000 a month in rent on an office space that they don't own. I have a small office space in Lorton, and I pay $700 a month. So my costs are a lot less than theirs. Another thing you want to do is make sure you're networking effectively. So you make yourself and your business visible at key government contracting and networking events, and identify events that will be beneficial to you and your business. I know we all enjoy our occasional happy hour, but you want to be careful, and you want to make sure that it's a happy hour or an event that's going to benefit you. Government agencies have monthly small business meet and greets. Every agency does them. All you've got to do is connect with their small business or their ombudsman, which is their small business representative, and find out when those events are. Uh-oh, did I freeze? Are we still there?
Yes, we're still here.
Oh, you scared me. The screen changed. The other thing you want to make sure you do as a small business is you market yourself effectively. So you want to make sure, like I said, you know who your potential client is. You want to make sure you know all of your products. You want to make sure that it's placed properly on your capability statement. And I know people are like, well, what's a capability statement? So the best way for me to describe a capability statement is it's a resume for your business. Whenever you go into a job interview, you take your resume. Whenever you go to a government networking event, you take your capability statement. And your capability statement is going to list who your company is, the services and products you provide, your NAICS codes, and I'll talk about what a NAICS code is in just a second, your DUNS number, your CAGE code, And I'll talk about those in just a second as well. And then you want to make sure that you follow up. So in this business, it's not about what you know, it's a lot about who you know and who you've networked with and who you've made connections with. So you want to make sure that you follow up, follow up, follow up. Your follow up is connected to your fortune, just like your network is connected to your net worth. So you want to make sure you gather contacts, and any contacts that you meet at these government events, send them an email. You send them an email, and in that email, put in your capability statement. Hi, I met you at the government procurement event. My name is LaShonda Bracey. I represent XYZ company. Some of our services that we provide are X, Y, and Z, and attaches my capability statement for your review. If you ever have opportunities that are a good fit, please keep me in mind. And when I tell you, I went into the government procurement event a couple months ago. I had a stack of business cards like this. If you don't have time to do it right away, what I do is I take those business cards and I'll create a generic email for everyone, and I use either a mail merge, or I'll go through and I only have to change the person's name in my heading and the agency name. But since that event, I've literally had 7 organizations reach out to me and send me RFPs that I hadn't even seen. So it's definitely beneficial. It's not about what you know all the time. It's definitely about who you know and who you've connected with and what type of impression you've left on them. So people actually ask, well, what is government contracting? And your government contractor is basically a private company, either for-profit or nonprofit. So when you think about your nonprofit agencies, a good example would be NeighborWorks. Your for-profit agencies, I can't think of one right offhand, but some communities are largely sustained by government, like I said earlier. And government contracts can offer you significant opportunities as your small business and or a boost. So when you think about who's considered a small business, typically in most NAICS codes, any business that is making less than $51 million is considered a small business. So just some food for thought and something to think about. Most of us on the call are not making $51 million a year. If you are, I need to talk to you after the call. So another good example of small businesses would be our small construction companies, not like a Clark or a Bechtel, but maybe a Echelon or one of the smaller groups. Those are small businesses because they're generating less than $51 million per year. And then you think about why government contracting. There are so many good ideas and reasons for government contracting, for contracting with the government. And it may not be the most profitable business, but it can be a great opportunity because if you think about it, with the government, you know you're going to be paid on time. You're going to get paid regularly because the government doesn't want to be on the front page of the Washington Post or any paper. And then you can have long-term contracts. So when I think about some of the business that I do that is not government related, some of those opportunities are very short-term. Hey, I need you to fix this website, and then that's the end of it. Now, with a government contract, or with a lot of my government contracts, this contract is with a year with an option to renew, or this contract is for 2 years or 3 years with an option to renew. So the other great thing is your government contractor, your client won't move away. They won't run away and hide. And they have to pay their invoices. Like I said, the higher profile your company is, the higher results you'll get. And the government is a high profile company, so like I said, they don't want to be on the cover of the Washington Post. Um, and government contracting can make your business grow fast. So just another example, there was some legislation passed a couple of years ago for small businesses. When you submit an invoice, your invoices can now be paid within 15 days. So I have a client that I know if I submit an invoice on October 1st, my check is deposited by October 15th. And that was one of the reasons why it was hurting small businesses, because you had a payout of maybe 30 days, 45 days. Now that's not the case if you're not a prime. Those timelines can be a lot longer if you are a subcontractor. But typically, when you're a subcontractor to an organization, you want to make sure that you put in that in your contract that you're paid within 5 days of them being paid by the agency if they're the prime. I'm trying to think of, I'm just rambling. Am I giving you too much information too fast?
No, but you know what? Have this pause. I do have a couple of questions for you.
Uh-oh. Okay.
So, LaShonda,
Yes.
let's say I want to be a government contractor.
Okay.
What would you recommend my very, very, very first step be?
The absolute very first thing you need to do is, like I said, you need to register properly. So in order to register properly, you need to know what your NAICS codes are. And your NAICS codes are basically, they're a unique, the government is basically a unique buyer of goods and services. So your NAICS code is your North American Industry Classification System. It's the NAICS code. It's your NAICS code. And it's a 6-digit code that identifies your products and services by your industry type. So for instance, because I'm in training, my NAICS codes are 611420, 611430. My HR code is 541519. I've got a list of NAICS codes that I use. So that's number one, because you need to know when you're doing a search for RFPs, you throw those NAICS codes in and you can generate all of the RFPs for that particular NAICS code that are available to you.
Now, so I've registered with SAMS.
So, but before you register with SAM, you want to identify what your NAICS codes are, but then you also have to go in and request a DUNS number. And your DUNS number is basically your Duns and Bradstreet number, and it's like a credit report of your business. And don't let anyone tell you that you need to pay for your DUNS number. You do not need to pay for your DUNS number. In the last couple of months, I've had so many people calling me saying, well, they're trying to charge me $199, or they're trying to charge me $59. This is some third party somebody that you don't have to pay for a DUNS number. If you go to the DUNS website, which is actually www.dnb.com, you can get your DUNS number.
And be careful of Google searches, because I know when I Google Dun & Bradstreet, because I received a similar call, there are people who have put Dun and Brad or D&B in their search codes, optimization, SEO,
Okay.
So they actually appear as one of the top
higher up.
Right, they appear higher up. So if you don't click on the right thing, that's how people end up on these third-party sites.
So one other thing I recommend for people to do is make the GSA website your best friend, because any place that you need to go outside of GSA, the link is on the GSA website. So the link to Duns & Bradstreet is on the GSA website. The link to pull NAICS codes It's on the GSA website. And the NAICS codes are actually associated with the Census Bureau. So the website for your NAICS code is www.census.gov/EOS/www/NAICS/. And the other thing that you want to do, if you ever plan on doing business with Department of Defense, you're going to need your company's Federal Supply Group or class code, and that's known as your CAGE code. And it's typically a number, it's a combination of numbers and letters. Like I said, your CAGE code is 5-digit. Huh?
I think that's also important for your audits.
Yes.
Because your CAGE code identifies your home DCAA audit agency, which is the Defense Contract Audit Agency. So they actually use that code to see which group you're getting audited from and who's responsible for your regular audit.
So when you think about your goods and services, or what goods and services the government actually buys, literally anything that you sell in the private sector can be purchased by the federal government. So did you know that the U.S. federal government actually buys nearly $100 billion worth of goods and services from small businesses each year? And that's, to me, I just need 1% of that. I need 0.5% of it, and I'm good to go. I don't need the whole $100 billion.
and that's your sustainability factor, because when Smith and Wesson, mom and pop goes out of business, or when Peaches and Cream's delivery services is ducking you to pay your invoices, the federal government is there. They're not going to move out of D.C. You can basically go sit in somebody's office and say, hey, I need my check. So, that's sustainability. When the economic downturn hit, and as much as everybody was fear-mongering with the whole government, when the government closed down,
that's right. Just
government contract. The work still has to go on. But, LaShonda, you still there? Okay. So, if the audience have questions, you can actually type them in, and I can read them off to you. These are just some questions that I have that I came up with. So, what is the first thing you would have me do when I come to the door to work with you? I've been to these networking events, and I'm like, I want to become a government contractor. I kind of think I'm registered in SAMS. What else should I do to become effective and efficient in contracting? I think I've done some of the basic steps, but what would I do next to create that sustainability? You've muted yourself. You're still on mute. Well, while we're taking care of this technical matter, it appears we've lost sound. Okay.
All right, there we go.
All right. Woo!
You muted me.
Yeah, I had you. Then it said that I couldn't unmute you, so we had too much.
So you were saying if you were somebody coming in off the street, what would be one of the I would walk you through the steps of, like I said, getting registered properly. I'm going to walk through. One of the worst things that happened to me is when I first got started in government contracting, I would ask companies, or I would ask people with high levels in companies, well, how did you get started? Well, how do you get a government contract, or what are you supposed to do? And everybody would say to me, just go to GSA website. That's not telling me nothing.
And
Okay,
that's
I'm
intimidating.
going to GSA website, and then what am I doing after I get to GSA website? So for me, I literally had to fish around and push every button to figure out how to get registered, because nobody officially told me how to register. So I would walk a person through being registered properly. Like I said, going into SAM and registering. So there's some things you need when you go into SAM. You need to make sure you've got your company's address. If you're using your home address, that's fine. You need to make sure you've got your bank account information set up right, because some systems now are paying through an IPP system, and that's one of those systems that will get you paid in 15 days as opposed to waiting on a check. You want to make sure you've got that NAICS code and that DUNS number, and if you're going to be working with DOD, that CAGE code. The other thing I want to remind people of is, once you're registered in SAM, you need to update your registration every year. If you don't update your registration, let's say you registered, today is the 14th of September. Let's say you register and you're taking your time, and next year on the 15th of September, you will no longer be registered. So if there's an opportunity and you've submitted a proposal, an organization is going to go in and check, and it's going to show that your registration is inactive. Mm-hmm. So that could be you potentially losing a contract or losing out on a contract because you're not registered. So I've been getting my little notice, and they start sending you the notices probably about 3 months before you need to renew. I can go ahead and renew it now. I'm not due to renew it until November 4th, but I'm going to go ahead and do it now so I don't have to think about it. This is proposal time, so I'm writing all kind of proposals, and that's probably one of the furthest things from my mind.
And I'll say this about SAMs too. You want to ensure, this is a plug for, LT&A's having the contractors conference. And one of the things we're going to talk about is the SAM's registration. Because quite frankly, people register and their registration is incomplete.
Right.
They don't have, if the next person who comes to me and say, I only have one NAICS code, I'm screaming.
You know what?
Because when you think about what you do, and even in the operations of your training, you have what, 2, 3 NAICS codes?
No, believe it or not, I think I'm at about 7 or 8 now because HR falls under, some of the HR stuff falls under training. I have the TAPS, because what if an agency wants a part-time training coordinator or a training coordinator or an instructional designer? I fall under IT because I do IT training a lot of the time. So I fall under several NAICS codes.
And that's the thing. So if you only have one NAICS code or you only have 2 NAICS codes, I would argue that you haven't done complete homework.
Right.
And that you need to go back and do some additional research to see how else or where else or what other codes are applicable to your service.
Exactly. So even when you think about somebody who is a cleaning company, you can use the logistics NAICS code as well as the service NAICS code as well as TAPS, which is the temporary services NAICS code, as well as the facilities NAICS code. So that's 4 NAICS codes for a person that's a cleaning company.
And I'll even go here, even within that, you can designate if you clean small business, bulk small businesses or large businesses. I mean
Exactly.
buildings, I keep saying businesses, but I mean buildings. And so that even further, and you know the benefit of that, if you agree with me or not, is that it keeps you from chasing opportunities that don't apply to you.
Right.
Because proposal development is
It's
expensive
it's
and
expensive, it's
timely.
not easy, and it's very time consuming. Trust me, I've been in this cubby for the last couple months just pushing out proposals. One week I pushed out 7. I don't know how I did it, but so now it's like a waiting game. So the other thing people need to realize is, like I said, just like you submit your resume for a job, you want to submit your proposals and submit several proposals. Don't only look for an opportunity and submit one proposal and you see 10 others and you don't even touch them.
Because usually if you create one template or one
Yeah,
style, as long as you're checking all the boxes and you're being compliant and answering
right,
all the actual questions, you can typically take the data from
right.
one proposal and do a
And all
touch
you're
of
doing
plug and play.
All you're doing is changing your numbers and your pricing. Hold on one second. I'm going to turn on the light because it's got dark real
Yeah.
quick.
So I do have a question in the audience, and it's like, what happens if a government agency, I believe you mean what happens when they contract with you? I mean, let me reverse the questions. So the question is, how does the proposal come into play? How do you bid on the contract? And what happens when you win the contract? I just reorganized what was written there. So let's kind of start with how do you bid on the contracts?
So typically, what I do is I seek out RFPs and I go to FedBizOps and I plug in if I'm not interested in every agency. I'm interested in about a handful and a half of it, maybe a handful of agencies. So what I typically do is I ran a search today because I knew that an RFP was out for I previously worked on over at Postal OIG. So it was a project that I helped develop. So I was like, oh yeah, let me write to this. And they have a blanket purchase agreement out. So they're looking for individuals under this blanket purchase agreement, and you're under the agreement for 5 years. So what I initially do is I search for opportunities that make the most sense for me. I'm also open to looking at opportunities that are outside the DC area. So you can do a search when you go into FedBizOps or FBO.gov. Under the search, I typically search by my NAICS code first, and then I'll narrow it down and start looking at organizations.
So the RFP or the request for proposal
Uh-huh.
is the vehicle that the government uses to say, hey, we're looking to hire somebody.
Right. So depending on the dollar amount, they have to post the
Yeah.
RFP for bid. Now, it could be an RFP, they could have set asides, but in general, the RFP has to be placed on FedBizOps to make it fair for the market.
And it has to be posted for a minimum of 30 days unless that has changed.
I don't know that that's true because I looked at something today that was posted on Monday and is like due on Friday.
Oh,
So
okay.
there have been a lot of things lately that have been posted and they have really quick turnarounds. And I will put a little plug in for when you see stuff like that, typically they already have in mind who they want for that contract. They're just doing their due diligence.
And so they can say when because the bid protests have increased lately. So that's the first thing they go back to. Hey, it was on FedBizOps, it was posted,
Right.
and it's not my fault that you didn't see it.
So the other
So,
thing is, yeah, when you're looking at, so I'm in a situation now with a client who, um, the incumbent, this client is pretty sure she's going to win this contract for Indian Health or for this organization, but the incumbent has protested. So that
mhm.
can hold up your contract for months. Sometimes, actually, believe it or not, I've heard of instances where it has held up a contract for years.
Yes.
Especially if it's a larger agency that can fight. So let's say there's a contract that Booz Allen has had for 20 years and some smaller company comes in and gets it. Booz Allen is going to protest.
Yes, because I know General Dynamics protested losing a contract they had for 10 years.
Hmm.
They lost the recompete. Actually, they had it longer than 10 years. But they lost the recompete to a small 8A company. And what they did was they didn't protest. They protested the decision. The protest got squashed. So then they said, since we developed the technology,
They're
we're
going to
going to
take
take
it.
our technology back.
So,
Now, I used to work for General Dynamics. I'm not talking badly about them, but they're very strategic in what they do. The end result
most of
ended
them
up
are.
being the end result ended up
They
being
have a choice but to keep them.
no, they still didn't get the prime. But what they did is they went to that 8A company and said, look, we can tie this up for years. We can take it, you can't. Make us a sub under you and
Yeah.
we'll drop our protest. And that's what happened. So keep in mind that in contracting, strategy is always in play.
Oh, yeah. Most
And
definitely.
and you have to think 50 ways from, that's why I tell anybody you need to have a consultant who has worked in the industry and has seen it and done it. If you're working with somebody and you look at their background and they haven't worked directly in the industry, I'm not saying they don't matter, it doesn't matter, but it can
Right.
make a difference as
Oh,
far as knowing what the
definitely.
strategies are and the negotiation tactics.
That's just
Um,
like what Donna was saying a couple weeks ago, like hiring a business development person. Why would you hire a business development person that knows nothing about the federal sector?
there you go.
Okay, I
You
get
have
you got business development on the private sector side, but it's a completely different ballgame.
And to address the rest of your question before I get to the next question, um, once you get the RFP, the request for proposal, you dissect it and you say, yes, I'm going to do this. And one of the things we're going to go through at the conference is how to make the bid, no bid decision. But there's sometimes it's just good to just walk away. You can't
Right.
do it.
Oh,
So
when I
once
look
you
at opportunities, when I look at some opportunities, not to sell myself short, but I'll look at things and I'll say, okay, that project would be a little bit too much for me to handle. This project is requiring you to have a training coordinator in every state, and you need to have folks identified when you get to your kickoff meeting 4 days after you've awarded the contract. I mean, it could possibly be done, but I know right now, with the size of my staff, I can't do a project like that.
and that's all a part of that vision of it. And that also plays a part in when you create your strategy for growth.
Right.
The things that so all of that kind of plays in fact. So once the government says, yes, I like your proposal, they're doing a lot of anyway. Once they decide that they like your proposal, I really that thought just kind of fell out my head, so I'm gonna try to act like it didn't. Then they contact me. Sometimes you still do a little bit of negotiating once they say, yes, we want to work with you. And they'll sit down at the table, you come in, you walk through the thing, and sometimes they will try to nickel and dime you down on your price. So your
Oh yeah,
pricing
sure.
has to be sharp. Because if you give in a little bit, you
They're
have
gonna
to
keep
make
trying to
sure
get
that
more
there's
for
some
you.
give and you'll give in.
Right. So that's the other thing you've got to do. You've got to make sure that when you give them a price, you stick to that price, and then whatever is on your task order, you follow that. I mean, I know that you've become close to Susie Smith, that is your core person that you are reporting to on this government contract. But if they're asking you to do something that's outside of the scope of work that you have, then you can't do it. You've got to do an addendum. You need to do an addendum to the contract.
And I'm going to tell you something from an audit perspective. There are times when contractors will get an email from a contracting officer, do this, tag it on to such and such a line, and it's okay, and they'll pay it. Here comes the auditor. Oh no, this is all outside the scope. You need to give this money back. Wait a minute, but I have this email that says, but that email is nice, but where's your contract addendum?
Right, where is the addendum to the contract? Exactly.
So now the next question I have, I'm going to tell you something. This is my personal opinion on certifications, and I'm going to let LaShonda jump in. If you're just getting into government contracting, don't let anybody shove 8A down your throat. 8A is a designation for businesses that have reached a certain level of contracting. They've actually just changed the rules where you have to have, I believe it's 2 to 3 contracts, not with the same agency. It used to be with the same agency. Now it's not. And 8A is a vehicle the government came up with to do multiple things, one of which is help you grow to get out of the, quote, small business market and become a big-time player. And it's supposed to give you an advantage so that you get opportunities for contracts that are not available to anybody else, so that you can get that growth. I throw out sustainability a lot, because sustainability is that ability to exist no matter what happens. If you're new in contracting, don't worry. 8A is something that's going to come down the pike a little bit.
Yeah,
and there's some things you need to have in place before you even say, hey, I'm going to be 8A certified. So no, you do not have to be certified to bid on a contract. There are some designations that are advantageous to you, but don't let anybody call you up talking about pay me $12, $15, $20, $30,000 so I can get you an 8A, and you just started. You don't even have your first prime contract. Don't even do it. LaShonda?
So my thought on that is, it's to everybody's own preference. I'm not 8A, and I haven't needed to be 8A. I looked at it earlier part of this year, but part of the problem for me is being an 8A agency, you can only own one company. So I would have to I would have to combine everything or do something different to be one company. That's number one. I've got the designation of a small woman minority-owned business. And I don't think this area is no longer a hub zone. It used to be. So I had that designation when I was still in Michigan. I was actually in a hub zone. So there are other set-asides that are available, and that I wouldn't solely focus on 8A. And because the other thing is, you've got to have your strategy in place, because once you graduate out of the program, you need to know that you've got business in place, because as an 8A, you're getting these contracts thrown at you, and then the moment you graduate out of, I've talked to several people who have been 8A, have graduated out of the program and have potentially almost gone bankrupt or don't have any business because all of their contracts were tied to that 8A.
I'm going to say this. There is a 89% failure rate for businesses after they graduate from 8A. Because they rested on that certification so heavily.
You didn't work in.
Graduated, they just couldn't compete. So, and in that 89%, that includes businesses that eventually got bought up by other businesses. So 8A is a strategic window of time for you to build stability, sustainability, and create an after the fact strategy in business.
Yeah, so you need to still be networking and marketing yourself. So, and definitely marketing to individuals who are not looking to just fill their 8A designation. The other thing is SBA has just opened, I don't know if it's released yet, but they are releasing the Mentor Protege program to
Yes.
all small businesses.
Which, once again, is a strategy.
Right.
Mentor Protege is an awesome program. However,
right.
if
You got to
go into it not knowing
right.
not know, you know, because I don't want to paint a picture of this great adversarial jungle. But keep in mind, the government does not like risk.
Oh, no.
The government is allergic to risk.
They are risk averse.
Risk adverse. To them, risk is cancer, and they're not going to get it. They have the only cure for cancer, and that cancer is called risk, and we ain't going to do business with
you. We're not going to do it.
But the Mentor Protege is an ability for small businesses to partner with the big guys.
Right.
But keep in mind, there has to be a benefit to the big guys.
You know it does. So it goes back to that General Dynamics that you were just talking about. They could have had a mentor protege agreement with that small company that won the contract. They still come in, and then you've got to be careful because sometimes the big guy, even though they're the sub, they'll take over. Where technically they should only be doing a certain percentage of the work.
And then they'll actually use that to say, hey, during recompete, we actually performed the majority of this work, and then you'll lose it on recompete, your subcontractor. So everything is a strategy. Everything is about education. That's what the contractors conference is about. And I'll tell you, even if you don't attend mine, attend somebody. Go to LaShonda's. I mean, learning is key.
I'll be at yours via FaceTime.
There you go. See? And we're at 7:52. So I just want wrap it up a little bit, and kind of go over hit some highlights for the evening.
Okay.
And the basics is simply you have to network. You have to put yourself out there so that the government agency you are trying to work with know that you exist. Bring your resume, which is your capability statement, and then follow up with them with those business cards. I met you at such and such an event. Looking forward to working with you. Should you have anything come down the pipe, keep me in mind. And just for reference, in case you lost it, here's my resume again, your capability statement.
One other thing I want to mention with following up, when you send that initial email and you don't get a response, don't panic. Send another email. Like, people get in this mindset that, oh, I don't want to bug them. No, your contracting officers, you need to be front of mind to them. So if you send something, so I have a list. I've got a spreadsheet of clients that I reach out to every other month, and then I've got some people that our conversations are a little bit more engaging, so I may reach out to them once a month. So I'm staying front of mind to them when it comes to, oh, we've got this training opportunity. Oh, I've got this ISD opportunity. Oh, I need this e-learning built. Because I've said, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. I'm just doing my check-in. I saw that you've had some opportunities posted. They didn't really fit me, but you may have some other opportunities. The other thing I did, because this is the end of the fiscal year, I know that everybody needs to spend the rest of their money. So I'm going after low-hanging fruit. hey, I'm just checking in to see if you by chance still have some training dollars that need to be spent by the end of the fiscal year. Is there some training that needs to be done by the end of the fiscal year? You have staff that need to be trained. We can schedule, we can do a week-long training. We can do a day-long seminar. We can do whatever the case may be. Get the low-hanging fruit too.
And don't despise meager beginnings. And this is on the federal or state level. If your first contract is for $10,000, that's $10,000 more than you had.
That's right.
And that's something else to go into your background or to add to your experience.
Oh, that's right. That's most definitely.
You know, make sure that when you register in SAMS that you walk through, first of all, do a walkthrough. Make sure you've already done your research so that you go in having the information that you need, address, your NAICS code, your bank account information, because the federal government is paying via wire transfer and not so much checks anymore.
Right.
In government contracting, there's this thing where they do everything in 5-year increments. And I think it's because you have 4 years with the presidency and then 1 year layover. So that's your 5 years. So I would advise you to create a 3 to 5 year strategy.
Most definitely.
So, you know, it's 7:55 and I've kept dropping hints about this contractors conference that's coming on October 19th and 20th. LaShonda is going to be Skyping in to do a whole workshop on registering properly in government contract. Woo! So, woo! I'm here to tell you that education is key. And if you don't register properly, if you don't get your key components done correctly, trying to fix it on the back end is almost impossible.
You know, yeah, it's easier to just do it right the first time.
Because when that auditor comes, you have X number of days to respond. And if you don't respond, they won't take it. I'm speaking from experience, they won't take it. And you're going to be sitting at the table trying to figure out how you're going to keep these dollars that these auditors want you to get back.
Right. That you've spent already.
Yes. And you've already paid your employees. So on September 28th, our next installment of the chatter, I'll actually be talking about the compliance factor. Where I'm going to touch on the basis of what should you have in place to ensure audit readiness. You know, don't wait for the auditor to knock on the door to get ready. Just be ready. And I'll actually touch on even some readiness that you need to have for these higher echelon certifications, such as the LT&A. Some things that need to be in place. So just register for our next installment of the chatter. If you want to reach out to LaShonda and kind of like have another conversation with her, LaShonda, how can they contact you?
So you can find me on Facebook at LaShondaBracy.com. You can also in Facebook type in Government Contracting Guru. You can find me on LinkedIn at LaShonda Bracy. You can find me on Twitter at LaShonda Bracy and Instagram at LaShonda Bracy as well. And you can also go to my website, which is www. I guess we won't have to do www anymore. LaShondaBracy.com. That's LaShondaBracy.com. If you put your name and your email address in, I'll send you a free 103-page guide on how to do government, how to do contracting, and how to get started with the Defense Logistics Agency.
Okay. So
I think that's a good tool because a lot of people don't even think about our defense agency or our DOD as a organization to go after. Everybody just thinks of, oh, let me go after this agency or that agency.
And the Department of Defense has the largest budget in the federal government.
That's right.
And they also fund some local projects.
Yeah, so right.
If you're not on a federal level, take a look on your state, especially if you're in an area that have bases.
Yep.
You know, they'll actually funnel stuff through the local government. So keep an eye out on that as well.
Yep, I'm right here next to Fort Belvoir, and there are opportunities that pop up all the time. I'm actually next to Fort Belvoir and close to Quantico, so I see a lot of stuff that you don't even think about, and you're like, oh, I could bid on that.
Yes.
So at some point, I'm sure I'll do something on actual proposal writing, but that will be a whole nother chat.
Oh, actually, we're going to talk offline after this conversation since you brought that up. So
Okay.
this ends this installment of Contracting Chatter. The recording will be posted in the group until Friday, 5 p.m., along with a summary of what we discussed this evening. After Friday, all of the past chatters are actually located at LT&A group.com/contracting chatter, where you can actually go back and look at our discussions on business development and growing a mindset, which Miss Dr. Stephanie Burrows, business development with Sheila Blackman, and our initial chatter where we were just firing off information on government contracting, what's out there, and we were just all in our pet peeves, and somebody said, it was good, but I got lost. There was just so much information. So we just wanna, that information is out there for you. So with that, I want to say good evening, be blessed, be compliant, build sustainability, and we'll see you in 2 weeks when we discuss the compliance
And
factor.
get registered properly.
Yes. Good night.
Have a good night.